You wrote this book coming out in a few months here. It's available for pre-order. Once again, it's called They're Not Gaslighting You, Ditch Therapy Speak and Stop Hunting for Red Flags in Every Relationship. What led you to write this book? Was it a particular experience or observation? Because I think that a lot of people throw therapy language, therapy speak around there, but I haven't seen anyone in the field actually talk about it. So what led you to write this book?
Well, this is the first book on therapy speak. There's no research on therapy speak yet. So I feel like this is sort of an uncharted territory, but every therapist amongst themselves is thinking about and talking with their colleagues about therapy speak in their sessions. And I think we've all always used it in our relationships casually. Therapists even have casually. But then people started using it in their sessions, in individual therapy, diagnosing people and wondering if they have disorders. And then what really started to worry me was that I'm a couples therapist. So I have couples coming in, diagnosing each other in front of me, asking me to verify diagnoses or terms of abuse. And I was like, this is really quite truly out of hand. And then I wrote a blog post called, Is Your Ex a Sociopath? And so many people read it. And I was like, oh, this is a real problem if this many people are wondering. It was kind of an offhand blog post, but it turns out everyone has just gotten really addicted to diagnosing and not doing it correctly.
Well, what is correctly diagnosing? Because I think that what's ambiguous, and you actually talk about this early on in your book, to me, what's ambiguous about like mental health diagnosis is that it's obviously like not as clear as diagnosing someone with the flu, which I just got diagnosed with, as you know, a week ago. So it's a little bit, I don't know if ambiguous is the right term because there are clinical reasons for it, but what's the clinical diagnosis process like for someone like you who's a doctor and qualified to do it?
So, and you're familiar with this as well. Mental health providers have our diagnostic Bible, which is called the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, and we're on the 5th edition. It's been through many iterations, and in it is every diagnosis that is recognized by the mental health community and by insurance. And so that is what we use. And they do research on prevalence rates and making sure that it's valid, and there's criteria. And so when you go through, you can read every diagnosis has a list of criteria. You have to meet a certain number for a certain period of time, and there's all sorts of other conditions you have to meet. And then you can have that diagnosis. The tricky part is that a lot of the criteria listed are extremes of normal behavior, and there's a lot of gray area. So I talk about, for example, narcissism. A quality of narcissism is envy, but we all feel envy. It's not the extreme envy that a narcissist feels, is consumed by, but it's very easy to look at the narcissistic criteria and think of someone you don't like in your life and just start checking off boxes because they probably are a little bit like all of those things, but maybe not actual, narcissistic personality disorder level. So it's this gray area that's really difficult for people. The nuance required is hard.
Yeah, and I think narcissist is a good one to maybe jump in a tiny bit on because I hear that one thrown around more than probably anything. The only other one is probably, which isn't even a diagnosis, but boundaries is thrown around a lot. But, narcissist, the sociopath, with narcissism, it feels like every single person has just decided their ex is a narcissist. Every single person who supports that person believes that person, that's their ex, is a narcissist. So first of all, what would classify beyond envy a narcissist diagnosis? How common are they or how rare are they in reality? And then, let's start there and then we can go to how throwing this term around about every ex is damaging.
Yeah. So, narcissists have I think there's 8 or 9 criteria and you have to meet 5. So it's things like envy, grandiosity, a lack of empathy, self-aggrandizing behaviors. And it's the person you imagine who is full of themselves, thinks everyone should bow down to them, excessive need for admiration and praise. And then they are very easily wounded because they actually have quite low self-esteem. So they need nothing but positive regard. And if they don't get that, they are quick to devalue and discard people in their lives, which does a lot of damage to people that they're in relationships with, obviously. However, a lot of us have narcissistic traits, either at certain times in our lives because we're teenagers who all appear a little narcissistic, or toddlers are very narcissistic, or you're going through a hard time, or you don't like the person that you're in a relationship or ending a relationship with. So many people who are, ending a relationship probably do seem narcissistic. They are not as empathic towards that person. They are self-serving. They are, I don't know, I'm sure there's a lot of accusations of grandiosity, but it doesn't mean that they are an actual narcissist, because if you're a narcissist, you're that way. You're, early adulthood, rest of your life, in every context. Maybe it doesn't present as a problem in every relationship or context, but there's no person who's just a narcissist with you. They're a narcissist with everybody, and it presents differently. But the prevalence rates of narcissism have not changed over time significantly.
Oh, really?
They're not going up. We're just seeing it more.
That's crazy. Because I've talked to a few people before, specifically about reality TV and influencers and stuff like that, and how we were just speculating about how maybe social media is like breeding more narcissism into people, which that sounds like it's totally wrong. And I feel bad for having that conversation now. But I think a lot of that culture on social media also breeds these conversations. And I know you've talked about that before, but you look at narcissism, and again, you see it thrown around about exes, about other people in your life. Social media, what impact do you feel like social media has had in playing a role in spreading these sort of misconceptions about narcissism, but therapy in general, especially diagnosis?
I think it's most of the problem, to be honest, because people who are not experts, who are not trained, who have not taken classes or been licensed in the mental health field, are feeling pretty comfortable speaking up about what qualifies as a narcissist. And they will give examples that may or may not be true. And if you have a big enough following, people will believe you, and it will have an impact and spread information, whether it's true or not. We've seen that a lot happening.
I've experienced that.
Indeed, you have an intimate knowledge of what that's like. So I think the fact that people are willing to listen to non-mental health experts define these terms and diagnoses, and whatever they say it is, people believe it is like the root cause probably of all of this misinformation, misdiagnosing, and this sense of feeling super comfortable diagnosing, which we've discouraged people from doing forever. Even clinicians are discouraged from overdiagnosing. But now people feel like it's empowering, and it's being educated, and it's tackling problems, to use these words.
Validated too, I bet. People feel validated. Yeah.
Yes, because they've been hurt and they want an explanation, and they don't want it to be their fault. And this is a way of doing that. And it feels approved. It feels clinically approved, even though it's not.
Thank you for listening to this clip from the full episode of Eyes Wide Open. Please like and subscribe for daily clips and new episodes that drop every Tuesday. I appreciate you.